Hello, Mixmay here. Following the last video about Claire Obscura and OMORI, it's fair to elaborate on what I said at the end that went along the lines of, if you're willing to kill even kids either to stroke your ego or because your hate for a group of people is that extreme, you can't claim to be a good person. It sounds like an extreme statement, but the reality we have to understand is that it doesn't matter if you're devoted to a religion, you do the bare minimum for your kids as parents, you're a functioning member of society, because as much as you'd wish doing good deeds and being abusive balance each other out on the morality scale, it does fucking not. But there are abusers out there who genuinely believe otherwise. So to start this off, let me tell you a story about Lobotomy Corporation's Big Bird. Big Bird was a creature who wanted to protect the Black Forest animals from a terrible beast that was killing them. Even after creating a lamp to ensure less creatures died to the beast, it was still an ongoing issue. Then one day, Big Bird decides, what if I kill the creatures first? Then no one will be killed by the beast. Since then, only a story about a creature that bites your head off remained. Lobotomy Corporation investigated the issue, Big Bird claiming to help them by saying, look for a creature that dazzles people. But the company concluded there was no such terrible beast in the forest, except for Big Bird. One of the things to note about Big Bird is that it believes, quoting the lore in game, death in itself is salvation. If it just ripped off the head of a poor little girl who got lost in the forest, there was no mistake, malice, or murder. It thinks it just saved the girl from the beast. Why I bring up this story is because it's a big allegory to how abusers are in the real world, because abusers are the type of people who are willing to abuse, traumatize, and even kill innocent people if it means saving them from the terrible beast, which to them means either being trans, fat, or gay, among other identities. And honestly, it ties into a lot of the fear-mongering the higher-ups intentionally do to label those people as morally bad, and I'll talk about fear-mongering in detail later. Much like Big Bird, abusers also believe that their actions are completely justified and that they've done nothing wrong, because they've done either the world or their god a favor because they believe the people who are the earlier mentioned identities are morally evil, when they clearly aren't. Similarly, as Big Bird was trying to help everyone find the terrible beast, saying it dazzles people, much like Big Bird itself could with its lamp, abusers who keep up appearances to look good are likely self-projecting their own abusive behaviors onto those morally bad people as a means of deflecting, and we have to be careful not to fall for those scapegoats, especially when bigotry is normalized to a point that if someone black, trans, gay, disabled, or fat does something bad that fits that bigoted narrative, abusers will exploit that to justify abusing them by using what happened as a gotcha to further amplify the narrative and correlate being X identity with being morally bad. This goes into the problem I spoke about in the vlog about the belief of treating bad people badly, because even if it turns out someone of those identities ends up fitting into the bigoted stereotypes and assumptions abusers are putting out there, you should be condemning their actions and not their identity, and you shouldn't be giving yourself excuses as to why it's justifiable to abuse someone, even if they may deserve it. Because that mindset is exactly what leads into harming and killing innocent people. What might start with someone who deserves it might spiral out of control if the hate towards people with a certain identity gets amplified, and that's what abusers are counting on, so they can actively encourage you to be abusive under the guise it's justifiable and not morally wrong, and this extends to them abusing people independent of bigotry. That's the problem in the world we live in right now. So long as abusers can keep up appearances to look like good people and cleverly craft their words to convince everyone it's okay to be abusive either towards one person or a group of people, you're not going to know any better, especially if you never heard about the other side where others have exclaimed, actually no, this isn't okay. And even if you did, depending on how easily manipulated or groomed you were by society or whoever else over the years, you might actually deny the possibility that you were groomed at all, which is what abusers are counting on. The mere exposure and illusory truth effects in action. It's especially dangerous when you understand this is how kids turn abusive because of what might happen at home with mum and dad if they are abusive. When kids are exposed to abusive or bigoted messages that adults, either individually or collectively as a society, are actively encouraging. You're not immune to propaganda or manipulation in the world, in whatever form it takes. And it's especially important to keep in mind in this era where generative AI is becoming more normalized and encouraged, and how news outlets, despite claiming to be neutral or unbiased, are still choosing to put bigoted narratives out there that encourage the hate towards a certain group of people. Because that's exactly how we end up having a state of mind where we'll harm or kill innocents without a second thought, because we basically believed either what's on TV or what mum and dad back home had taught us. And as I spoke about before, if abusers can get away with something like fat phobia because of how normalized it's gotten in the world, how much more do you think they'll get away with? And you know they're getting away with a lot more things right now now if you paid attention with what's happening in the world, ranging from genocides to generative AI's negative impact on the world, and the reason you haven't probably cared is because it hasn't affected you personally. We also have to think about that bigger picture for that reason, understanding the hypocrisy when abusers claim they care about the well-being of others, but are acting in ways that would make them worse, which I touched on in the Claire Obscura and OMORI video. In case you didn't watch it without giving game spoilers, it's like when you understand OMORI is a game that tackles mental health. It would be ridiculous to claim that you care about these fictional characters struggling and wanting them to get better, but acted in ways that will make it harder for them to recover, like being abusive or bigoted, because those fictional characters could be people you know in the real world, your family members, friends, loved ones, and it would be blood on your hands if you fucked up their life by acting abusive. I know a number of abusers out there who know someone who either committed suicide, been disabled or traumatized because of abuse, but will actively choose to dishonor their memory by abusing other people, even when the consequences of their actions are fully known to almost let history repeat itself, because either trauma or bigotry hinders their ability to be better people. It's appalling how some people don't understand that abuse and suicide don't happen in one specific way, and that expectation is going to be the reason why they won't realize the consequences of their actions until it's too late. Because you don't have to physically abuse someone to call it abuse. It can be verbal and emotional abuse, gaslighting, rage baiting, or invalidating their feelings, among other things. You shouldn't have to see physical signs of attempted suicide or self-harm to believe someone is suicidal. You just have to witness how that person has lost their will to live to a point they can't function and live their life like everyone else can, and not believe it's pure laziness, as it had been for me. You don't need someone to look exactly like or similar to any of the characters from OMORI to take mental health seriously. They could be black, gay, trans, disabled, or fat. As mentioned multiple times in the past, so long as you're actively making exceptions to your advocacy or beliefs pertaining to being a good person, you can't truly claim to be honest about upholding them. And I think to the abusers who wholeheartedly believe they're good people while actively being abusive, that's going to shatter their reality when they realize too late the consequences of their actions, if they do at all. That's a problem especially with bigotry again, when society pushes narratives that imply or outright mention that people deemed different aren't considered human. When someone isn't considered human, that implies it's okay to be abusive towards them, that they're an exception. Trans and gay people being deemed mentally ill or pedophiles, disabled people being deemed a burden to society, fat people being deemed a disease, and so on. And that's why abusers won't take the deaths of those people seriously, and it really shows their lack of humanity when they go as far as to openly mock even innocent people who die, and will still claim after all that they're a good person. All that said, we have to avoid the temptation of doing it back towards abusers, no matter how we feel about them. Self-defense against abusers is one thing, and I'm all for it. It's another to act out with malicious intent. It's also fair to acknowledge that desperation driven by fear can also be the reason why people abandon their morals and values because of the damage fear-mongering can cause, and that may also create abusers in the process. Because even if your intentions are good, the mindset of the ends justify the means can be extremely dangerous when the subject involves death, suffering, or becoming a morally bad person for obvious reasons, and even more so when your actions don't result in the outcome you wanted. Following Big Bird's story from the beginning, the story of how Apocalypse Bird came to be was a prime example of this. Big Bird, Punishing Bird, and Judgement Bird were warned by a prophet about an apocalypse that would destroy the Black Forest that they lived in, and each bird's actions, driven by fear, ended up making things worse, eventually causing the very apocalypse they were trying to prevent. So let's put a real-world example on the table, and I'll use Feverfew since that's my strong suit. If the fear of weight gain scares people that much because of XYZ reasons, how might they act out when someone gains weight, be it a friend, partner, or their own child? If the fear of fat people just existing scares people that much because they make them uncomfortable or feel that it's morally wrong for them to exist, how might they act out on that fear? Because if that fear drives people to pursue any means necessary to ensure the worst doesn't happen, whether or not it's the truth or a lie, that might mean those people will resort to being abusive or self-harming to prevent that fear from coming true. And I spoke about on this channel how fat phobia at its worst can kill, much more than just existing fat could, and how it's literally unavoidable in the world as it appears in kids media, school, adulthood, and on the internet, because we're way too obsessed with the pursuit of being thin, and Exposing Fat Phobia Part 2 is going to cover that in more detail. When it comes down to bigotry otherwise, it becomes a lot worse when you could summarize why abusers are trying to label being woke as a bad thing is because they don't want others to become good people. Because if being woke also means abusers can't be abusive without getting caught, of course they'll try and manipulate everyone around them by demonizing behaviors associating with it, which in short, speaking out against the wrongs of the world. That's how we get double standards in the world if abusers are the ones driving the narrative, because to them, calling them out for their abusive behaviors is abuse when it's obviously not, yet their abusive behaviors, there's always a justification for it. Recall when I spoke about fat phobia in the past, there were two situations I dealt with, one professional and one that wasn't, that embodied that very double standard that calling out fat phobia and existing fat was much worse than the abuse that was actively being encouraged and spread in those spaces, which I've mentioned can create body insecurities and eating disorders, and both perpetrators over-exaggerated the events that transpired to make it sound like I was the abuser and they were the victim. That's no different to how abusers work in every abusive scenario you can think of, because at the core of it, they're desperate to be malicious and get away with it. The same problem with desperation applies to anyone vulnerable regardless of age, where they can be taken advantage of by abusive adults. And if those vulnerable are desperate for validation, belonging, any of that, they will too become abusers, abandoning their morals and values in the process, just to appease those basically manipulating them. And I've realized this is especially a problem if you have a close relationship or friendship with someone who is an abuser, because it poses an important question to yourself. What do you value more? Your morals, beliefs, and values pertaining to being a good person, or the connection you have to this abusive individual? Because you can't compromise in the way that you can just be neutral when talking about abuse. It's like that one sentence that went along the lines of, if there's an abuser at the table and everyone there welcomes them, they're all abusers. Because it can be a red flag in itself if you're associated with and have a good relationship with someone who's blatantly known to be bigoted or abusive, even if you claim you're not either one yourself. And it's sad when I've witnessed some people turn into abuse apologists or even choose to stay as an abuse apologist specifically because their relationship or friendship with an abuser is that strong, either due to grooming or manipulation. At its worst, they would literally kill or harm someone even innocent if either their abuser asked them to, if they personally believe they would appease their abuser, or if they know they can get away with it because the abuser will come defending them, all while the abuser still gets away with whatever abuse they're committing otherwise. And we have to understand this can happen beyond personal friendships or relationships. So let me talk a bit from my own experiences on the whole good person thing, as an extension from what I spoke about in the Treating Bad People Badly vlog. Desperation driven by fear was something I too had acted out on given my circumstances in the past. Fearmongering was something I was whammied with a lot since I was little, and in the more recent years when it really started taking a toll on me, among other things, I acted out really erratically, ranging from trauma dumping inappropriately, hiding sensitivity over things that shouldn't have been a big deal, getting close with abusers and abuse apologists when my mental health completely shattered a few years ago, even a vlog I did earlier this year that I ended up taking down. It's something I still have to work on, and is what held me back from being a good person for a long time. Another thing as well, and the most important thing I want to share that ties into that, was a victim complex I had since high school, where if you don't know, it's basically a mindset that when someone calls you out for anything bad you've done, you cannot process it as anything more than a personal attack on yourself, and that inability to sit with the discomfort of being called out stops you from learning from your mistakes and being a better person. It's a delicate area to tread on, but one thing I believe we can all agree on is that your trauma or abuse you faced doesn't justify the harm you caused to other people, and it doesn't give you a free pass to do bad things. That was me in high school for the most part, where sure, I was a victim of abuse in one situation, but I was the abuser in all other situations that happened. And unfortunately, when I relapsed in 2024, yeah, not good. And one hypocrisy I think you need to watch out for with abusers with victim complexes is that, I think this is something I did as well, is in the same breath they try painting themselves the victims of any situation that happened or try justifying for their behaviors, they were willing to spout bigotry or abusive remarks towards their victim in that attempt to slander them. It's one thing to express your frustration about whoever wronged you, it's another when you act out on the belief of treating bad people badly. Because if I had to witness a friend spout bigotry of any kind about someone that wronged them in any way, I would have to reconsider my relationship with them, because chances are, if I fall out with that person in the future, they're going to do the exact same thing to me. Some had already done so, and I know while I do need to be held accountable for people who I'd wronged horribly in the past, they absolutely need to learn they cannot be coming off bigoted or abusive in their approach to calling me out. It goes into the whole concern that it's well and good if you need to raise awareness about certain topics, issues, behaviours, or people we need to avoid, but if you're doing it in a way that does far more harm than good, you seriously need to reconsider your approach. Because some of the situations I had over the years, some abusers resented or hated me that much, they were taking advantage of some of the situations that happened. They either groomed innocent people into thinking it's okay to be abusive because I'm a bad person, again, treating bad people badly, or were willing to endanger those I was close with just to get back at me. It's fucking disgusting behavior that no one should ever try to do, no matter how angry you are at someone for any reason. But obviously, abusers don't play fair. In the same way where one of my biggest challenges over the years was finding out what a good person meant in this world. And as I touched on last year, when I was constantly surrounded by people who were abusive and trying to dictate what that meant for me. Because it's like a damned either way situation where if I did something bad, those people under the treating bad people badly belief will abuse me over those bad things. But if I did the right thing, which might involve calling out those abusers, I'm still going to be abused anyway. And it's ironic when you hear things thrown around by abusers like relationships work both ways or open up to me if you're struggling with anything, but they'll cower when you call them out for the bad they're doing. When they start getting uncomfortable with the guilt of what they've done to you, even when what they've done has directly affected you, or otherwise invalidating or mocking you for what you say. Because they've already made up in their minds they've done absolutely nothing wrong, like Big Bird, or that the ends justify the means, like Apocalypse Bird. Anyone can pretend to be a good person in public, but when conflicts come up, those are the red flags to look out for to tell you if someone's a bad person. And this bounces back to a lot of what I've been saying in this whole video. If we really cared about stopping evil or bad people making the world worse, we have to be willing to self-reflect and ask ourselves in the grand scheme of things if how someone identifies, their appearance, or lifestyle choices are worth abusing and killing people over. Because if I hadn't said enough, the moment you believe an abuser's words telling you it's okay to be abusive, it's okay to be bigoted, it's okay to fucking murder because there's even one exception, or because the end justifies the means, your moral compass is going to be destroyed. You're going to be another Big Bird in the world, or as a collective hate group, you're going to be very identical to Apocalypse Bird. Again, as I said before, understand exactly what it means to be a good person in this world will mean you may have to go against the messages you might have grown up with and believed all your life. It's not easy if you're like me who basically stumbled all their life. But that's the work you gotta do. Like I said at the start, I don't care about the good deeds or morals and values you have that relate to being a good person. The good you do does not balance out in any way the abuse and harm you cause to other people. If you can't handle the reality that perhaps you're not a good person, because you know you've made exceptions to your kindness, morals and values, because you know you're either a bigot or abuser, then instead of getting angry with the discomfort of being called out, start doing better. Honestly, there could be a lot more I could talk about in relation to this. There is a part 2 to this where I'm going to talk about a specific line from the Once Upon a Time TV series that honestly sat with me since I came across it as a teenager, one I never understood that relates back to everything I said in this vlog. But for now, I'm honestly tired. Make sure you eat enough, hydrate, take meds if you do, and until next time.